Imagine you've spent like 3 years meticulously memorizing English grammar rules.
Right, just drilling them every day.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the pluperfect tense, backward and forward. You aced literally every written exam your teacher's ever put in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you step off a plane, walk into this loud, super crowded coffee shop in London, and the barista mumbles a 10-word sentence at rapid speed.
And your mind just goes completely blank.
Utterly blank. It's like you never studied a day in your life.
Why does our brain completely betray us the moment we step outside the textbook?
Well, I mean, that betrayal feels intensely personal, like
Not like
failure. But it's actually a deeply predictable cognitive response.
Really? Predictable how?
So when you transition from a sterile, quiet academic environment into the wild, your brain is suddenly forced to process all this acoustic interference.
Like the espresso machine going off and people chatting. Exactly. Plus, there's immense social pressure and a completely different set of vocabulary that almost never appears in formal literature. You're not taking a paper test anymore. You're basically performing this highly complex sociolinguistic dance in real time.
A sociolinguistic dance. I like that.
Yeah.
And that dance is exactly what we're dissecting today. Welcome to our deep dive. We are taking a massive journey into the evolution of how we actually learn and practice conversational English today.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. And we have pulled together an incredibly rich stack of sources for you. We're pulling from deep academic frameworks on the sociolinguistic evolution of English as a global lingua franca. We've got practical ground-level ESL teaching modules.
Yeah, and we're also analyzing extensive conversational phrase books, specifically the 500-plus Real English Phrases Guide and the Comprehensive Think English Guides.
Which are so practical. And to top it all off, we have highly technical breakdowns of the absolute latest AI conversational tutors and global language exchange networks.
Basically, it's a holistic map of the modern language learning ecosystem. We're looking at the exact intersection where traditional pedagogy meets cutting-edge cognitive science and, digital technology.
Right. Because our mission today is to shortcut the path to functional fluency for you. We're going to explore that massive, intimidating gap between pristine textbook grammar and the messy, vibrant, just unpredictable reality of real-world communication.
And more importantly, unpack the exact tools to bridge that gap.
Yes, the specific psychological frameworks, the neurological mechanisms you need. Because if you think about it, learning textbook English and then trying to speak it in a noisy pub is like, well, it's like learning to drive in an empty, completely flat parking lot.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
And then immediately being forced to merge onto a 5-lane highway in the pouring rain.
Yeah, you're going to crash.
Right. The core mechanics of the steering wheel might be the same.
Yeah.
But the environmental variables change absolutely everything. So let's start with the very first thing you do when you open your mouth, which is the greeting.
The entry point.
Yeah. I noticed in the phrase books we're looking at today, they actually actively discourage some of the most common textbook phrases.
They do, and the reason goes back to a really fundamental shift in how linguists view language now. Historically, language learning was obsessed with formal grammatical mastery.
Like trying to sound like a 19th century novelist.
Exactly. But today, the focus has shifted entirely to functional, communicative fluency, because English is the global lingua franca. It's a tool for getting things done.
Right.
Therefore, a greeting is not just, an arbitrary string of words you throw into the air to announce you've arrived. A greeting is a highly calibrated social tool. It actively reflects the relationship between the speakers, the specific time of day, the power dynamics at play, all of that.
The immediate social context, I see this constantly. Like the classic, hi, how are you, is ubiquitous. It functions as a universal passkey.
It's very safe.
It's super safe. You can say it to a barista, a neighbor, a boss. It's a neutral, friendly opening. But if you walk into a Monday morning product meeting with your team and offer a formal good morning, how is everyone currently feeling?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be weird.
It completely stalls the momentum. It feels robotic.
It sounds robotic because you're using the wrong social tool for the job. In that specific context, the phrase books highlight that you would use something like morning, ready to start.
Right.
Because that phrase isn't just a greeting. Its primary sociolinguistic function is to energize the team and establish an immediate collaborative forward momentum. It carries an entirely different social weight.
It's like wearing a stiff, formal tuxedo versus throwing on a perfectly broken-in pair of jeans.
That's exactly it.
But if the textbook is wrong, or at least inappropriate for the context, how do learners know which jeans to wear without offending someone? Because my first instinct when looking at informal registers is to assume they're just lazy speech.
Which is a huge myth.
Right. The sources point out how the standard phrase, "how is it going?" has evolved over time into this phonologically reduced rapid-fire sound that basically sounds like, "how's it?"
How's it? Yeah,
If a learner has only ever seen "how is it going?" written beautifully on a chalkboard, "how's it" is going to sound like complete unfiltered gibberish.
totally. And calling it lazy speech is a really common misconception, even among native speakers. What you're actually hearing there is an incredibly sophisticated pursuit of acoustic efficiency.
Acoustic efficiency. Tell me more about that.
So the human mouth is biologically designed to expend the least amount of energy possible while conveying the maximum amount of information.
We're naturally lazy.
Essentially, yes. In fast speech, English speakers constantly compress words, drop syllables, and link consonants to vowels. So transitioning into an understanding of these informal registers is not just about trying to sound cool, it's an absolute survival requirement for native-like listening comprehension.
Because if you don't know it, you're lost.
Right. If you don't know that "how is it going" mechanically reduces to "how is it" because the vocal tract naturally wants to skip the glottal stops, you simply won't understand the person standing in front of you.
That makes so much sense. I noticed a similar phenomenon when the phrase books tackle reconnections.
Oh, like running into an old friend.
Yeah, let's say you bump into a colleague you haven't seen in 3 years. The rigid, grammatically perfect textbook approach might be to say, "I have not seen you in a long time."
Which nobody says.
Exactly. My hypothesis is that native speakers avoid this, not because it's grammatically incorrect, but because it feels almost accusatory. Like, "Where have you been? It's too stiff."
Yeah, your hypothesis about it feeling accusatory touches on something very real. Stiff, overly formal grammar in an intimate setting creates an artificial distance between speakers.
So instead, the sources give us these beautifully compressed phrases like, "long time no see," or "it's been too long, have you been?"
And that phrase, "how have you been?" is fascinating linguistically. It's a heavily compressed version of the present perfect simple tense, "how have you been?"
Right.
Native speakers use the present perfect there because they are inquiring about the entire span of time from the last meeting up to the exact present moment. But they compress it so heavily that the learner just hears a single, fluid sound block. "How have ya been?"
"How have ya been?" Yeah, it's all one word. But then on the absolute other end of the spectrum, you have the formal entry.
The tuxedo.
Yes. Let's say you're at a high-stakes networking event or maybe a venture capital pitch. You can't walk in and say, "How's it?"
Definitely not.
You deploy specific formal phrases to establish credibility. The sources suggest structures like, "I don't think we've met before. I'm," followed by your name. Or the classic, "It's a pleasure to meet you."
To which the expected, sophisticated conversational volley is a simple, elegant likewise.
Right, so it's a completely different game.
It is. And this brings us to the core concept of registers. A register is the level of formality and tone you adopt depending on your environment. And mastering registers is how you ensure you're wearing the right conversational clothes.
But the greeting is really only the first 10 seconds.
Exactly. Transitioning from that initial entry point into a sustained, meaningful conversation requires the strategic deployment of a highly misunderstood tool, which is small talk.
Oh, people love to hate small talk. I mean, we view it as this meaningless chatter about the weather.
We do, but viewing small talk as meaningless is a fundamental misunderstanding of human sociology. Small talk is the bridge.
The bridge to what?
It's the social lubricant that allows two humans to establish trust and assess each other's emotional state before engaging in high-stakes communication. You ask things like, "What have you been up to these days?" or "Any plans for the weekend?"
Because you're not necessarily demanding a detailed itinerary of their Saturday.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
You are offering an invitation to connect.
And the phrase books place a massive emphasis on active listening during this phase. I mean, you can't just throw out a question about the weekend and then mentally check out while you wait for your turn to speak again.
If you do that, the conversation dies immediately.
Right. Active listening requires mechanical participation. The sources highlight phrases like, "That's interesting, tell me more," or "Gotcha," or "I see your point."
Linguists call those back-channeling cues.
Back-channeling cues.
Yeah, and they serve a vital psychological function. They validate the speaker, they signal that the communication channel is still open and functioning, and they invite the other person to expand on their personal narrative.
So they keep the social gears turning smoothly without you having to constantly invent new topics out of thin air.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've successfully navigated the social entry. We read the room, We chose the correct register, we deployed our back-channeling cues, and we built a friendly rapport.
We broke the ice.
Yes. But at some point, you have to stop chatting about the weekend and actually navigate the physical commercial world. You have to buy things, find things, get to places, and that requires a major shift. We have to move from casual rapport to highly functional transactional language.
And navigating an urban and commercial landscape requires an entirely different cognitive toolkit. It relies heavily on prefabricated language chunks.
Prefabricated chunks.
Yeah. The reason native speakers navigate complex transactional situations, like ordering a complicated coffee or buying a train ticket, so effortlessly isn't because their brains are rapidly inventing and conjugating brand new sentences from scratch every single time.
Right.
It is because they rely on these pre-built formulaic chunks.
Meaning sentences you don't build piece by piece, but rather pull off the mental shelf entirely intact.
Yes, from a neurological perspective, pulling a pre-assembled chunk bypasses the working memory's grammar assembly process. This drastically reduces your cognitive load.
Cognitive load, so how hard your brain is working.
Exactly. In a fast-paced, high-stakes interaction, your brain needs all the available RAM it can get to process the environment, listen to the background noise, and read the other person's body language. If you're spending all your mental RAM trying to remember where the verb goes, you will freeze.
You just hit a wall. Let's look at how this plays out in transportation, because that is where the stakes feel the absolute highest when you're traveling.
Oh, without a doubt.
If you are lost in a new city and need to find the bathroom, the biological instinct is urgency. You want to walk up to a stranger and demand, "Where is the bathroom?" or "Where is the train?" But the ESL modules explicitly warn against this.
Because it is perceived as incredibly abrupt and often deeply rude.
Right. English culture, particularly in Britain and to a slightly lesser extent in North America, places a massively high premium on indirect question structures to signify politeness. You do not demand.
You use what linguists call mitigators.
Mitigators, right. Instead of a direct demand, you deploy a chunk like, "I was wondering if you could tell me where the bathroom is," or "Do you happen to know what time the bus arrives?"
Those mitigators act like shock absorbers. They soften the impact of the request and give the stranger a polite way to enter the interaction.
And when you actually get to the train station, rail travel has its own impenetrable vocabulary. If you're standing at a ticket counter at Victoria Station in London, and there is a line of angry, impatient commuters breathing down your neck, you need specific chunks.
You really do. You aren't just buying a ticket.
Right. You're navigating terms like a day return versus a period return. You might need to ask, is there a buffet service on this train? Because the journey is 4 hours long.
And we see this exact same necessity for functional chunks in retail and commerce. I mean, think about it. 10 years ago, the most complex transactional phrase a traveler needed was, "How much does this cost?" Today, the commercial landscape is entirely digital. Managing digital access is a foundational requirement. Walking into a space and knowing how to seamlessly ask, "What's the Wi-Fi password, please?" or "Do you take contactless payment?" are daily, non-negotiable necessities.
Absolutely. The Teach This ESL materials provide some brilliant, highly realistic role-play scenarios to train this exact muscle.
I love those modules.
They're so good. They have modules named things like fussy eaters or at the coffee shop. What I love is how they force the learner to focus on polite markers within the transaction. Instead of walking up to the counter and saying, "I want a salad," which sounds like a toddler making a demand, use the polite chunk, "Can I have a salad, please?" But the genius of these role plays is that they force you to anticipate the variable response.
Right, because the server doesn't always read the script.
Exactly. The server might say, "Certainly, here you are." Or they might hit you with a negative variable, "I'm sorry, we don't have any left."
And that negative variable is exactly why the cognitive load must be kept low. When the server says they are out of salad, the learner is forced to instantly pivot, process the rejection, and formulate an entirely new request on the fly.
But let me push back on this concept of memorizing chunks for a second.
Okay, go for it.
I understand the efficiency of it. But if we're essentially just drilling people to memorize these formulaic scripts for ordering coffee or buying train tickets, isn't that just robotic repetition?
I see where you're going with this.
It feels like we are asking them to recite lines from a school play. Does acting out a script actually lead to real, spontaneous, organic fluency?
It's a vital question, and it really represents a common frustration among intermediate learners. But the critique misses the underlying neurological mechanism at play here.
Okay, lay on me.
What we're doing by drilling these chunks is building something called cognitive flexibility. When you rehearse these dialogues repeatedly from memory, rather than reading them slowly off a page, you alleviate your brain's dependence on conscious grammatical rules. You build automaticity.
Automaticity. So the phrase "can I have" is no longer three distinct words. It's a single, unbreakable unit of sound.
Yes, exactly. And because you have automated the structure of the request, your working memory, your brain's RAM, is completely freed up.
Got it.
So, let's go back to that coffee shop. You say, "Can I have a latte, please?" Because you didn't have to think about the grammar of that request when the barista suddenly interrupts your script with an unexpected rapid-fire question like, "Do you want room for cream in that?" Or, "Is that for here or to go?" You do not freeze.
Because you aren't bogged down in verb conjugation.
Right. You have the mental bandwidth available to process the auditory surprise, understand the question, and dynamically respond. You are building a concrete foundation so solid that you finally have the luxury to improvise.
Okay, that reframes it beautifully. You aren't memorizing a script so you can sound like a robot. You are memorizing the script so your brain has the spare energy to act like a human when the script inevitably breaks.
That's a great way to put it.
But here's the elephant in the room. I know people who have memorized thousands of chunks. They have amazing vocabularies. Their working memory is theoretically freed up.
But they still freeze.
Yes. When they step up to that coffee counter and the barista looks them in the eye, they still absolutely freeze. Their vocal cords lock up, they sweat, and they can't remember a single word. What is happening in the brain there?
What you're describing is perhaps the single most formidable hurdle in all of language acquisition. It is not a deficit of vocabulary. It is not a lack of grammar. It is a profound psychological barrier.
Psychological.
Yes. In the field of psycholinguistics, this phenomenon is heavily studied and is known as the affective filter.
The affective filter. So the idea that your own internal emotional state is literally acting as a net, filtering out your ability to access the knowledge you already have stored in your brain.
That is exactly the mechanism. The affective filter is an invisible emotional hurdle. It's powered by the profound human fear of making mistakes in front of the tribe.
The fear of looking foolish.
Exactly. It's the fear of being judged as unintelligent, the anxiety of being misunderstood, and the sheer vulnerability of making strange sounds with your mouth in front of a native speaker. When this anxiety spikes, it triggers a mild fight-or-flight response.
Wow, literally fight or flight.
Your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex, and your ability to access your memorized language chunks simply shuts down.
The academic studies we reviewed, particularly the ones analyzing user behavior on the Gliglish platform, provide some incredibly stark, heartbreakingly honest insights into this.
They really do.
The researchers interviewed students about why they don't practice speaking, and one learner explicitly stated, "I feel scared of making mistakes and being laughed at by my friends."
It's so visceral.
It really is. I liken it to stage fright. You can practice a song 100 times in your shower and sound like a Grammy winner. But the second you step on a stage and a spotlight hits you, your throat closes. Even native speakers freeze up when they feel judged by an audience.
The stage fright analogy is biologically accurate. The physiological response is identical. And this is precisely why having a highly precise, nuanced vocabulary to express your own internal emotional state is so critical. The sources emphasize heavily that in the domestic and personal sphere, learners must move far beyond basic adjectives.
I found this fascinating. The phrase books insist that a learner shouldn't just say, "I'm tired." They need the precise emotional vocabulary to articulate exactly what kind of tired they are.
Right.
They need to be able to say, "I'm exhausted," or "I'm completely drained," or "I'm beat," or my personal favorite idiom, "I'm running on fumes."
Running on fumes is a great one. And that extends to physical health as well. Being able to look at a colleague and say, "I'm feeling a bit under the weather today," or preemptively apologizing for a delay by saying, "I apologize, I wasn't feeling well and my brain is a bit foggy."
It's vulnerable.
It is, but being able to accurately articulate your emotional and physical state to the people around you actually serves to lower that internal frustration and anxiety. It buys you grace from the listener.
Okay, but this creates a paradox. If the affective filter is essentially severe stage fright, and the only way to get over stage fright is to get on stage and practice, how do we bypass the block?
It's a classic catch-22.
Right. If people are too terrified of judgment to open their mouths, how do they ever accumulate the thousands of hours of spoken practice they desperately need to achieve automaticity?
Historically, breaking this paradox was incredibly difficult. The key to bypassing the effective filter is finding what pedagogues call a safe, judgment-free zone,
A place where you can't fail.
where you can't be mocked. You need an environment where the learner can speak, make horrendous grammatical errors, stumble over pronunciation, and face absolutely zero social consequences. Traditionally, finding an infinitely patient, completely non-judgmental human partner meant hiring a very expensive private tutor.
Right, which creates a huge access problem.
Exactly. Which brings us to the most significant paradigm shift in modern language learning. Technology has explicitly stepped in to fill this exact psychological gap.
And it has filled it with unprecedented scale. This desperate global need for a safe, infinitely patient practice partner has ushered in the era of AI-driven conversational tutors.
It's an absolute revolution.
Artificial intelligence is no longer just a gimmick. It is acting as the ultimate mediator for conversational practice. We are looking at a booming landscape of applications featuring real-time natural language processing, instantaneous voice recognition, and dynamically adaptive learning paths.
The tech is staggering now.
Let's break down this ecosystem because different apps are solving very different problems for the learner.
Well, the fragmentation of the app landscape is actually its greatest strength because it allows learners to target their specific anxieties. Take an app like LSS Speak.
Okay, Elisa Speak.
LSS leans heavily into highly technical accent training and pronunciation. It is widely used by professionals prepping for formal, high-stakes exams like the IELTS or the TOEFL.
So it's very rigorous.
Very. It doesn't just tell you that you said a word wrong. It provides highly quantitative visual feedback on exactly how you are mispronouncing specific phonemes, showing you literally where your tongue should be.
It's treating language like a pure physical science.
Exactly.
But if you want something that feels more like a spontaneous conversation, you have Gliglish. Gliglish is powered by ChatGPT models under the hood, but it's wrapped in a voice interface. What makes it incredible is the multilingual speech recognition.
The seamless switching is amazing.
It is. Let me paint a picture of how this works. You could be in the middle of a role play about renting an apartment in New York.
Yeah.
The AI asks you a question. You freeze because you don't know the English word for lease. With Gliglish, you can seamlessly switch to your native Spanish, ask the AI, how do I say the contract for the apartment? And the AI will switch to Spanish, explain the word lease, and then gracefully pull you right back into the English role play.
And the latency is practically zero.
It is an incredibly fluid safety net.
Then you have platforms like Laura, which essentially offer a 24/7 personal tutor in your pocket. Laura focuses relentlessly on real-life contexts.
Like the coffee shop.
Yes, it forces you into that coffee shop scenario we keep returning to, but the AI plays the barista. Crucially, it provides a daily fluency score. Gamification is a powerful tool to maintain habit formation over long periods.
And there are others targeting very specific user preferences too. Speak offers highly structured mastery, feeding you custom sentences designed to aggressively target the exact grammatical structures you consistently fail at.
A very targeted approach.
Lengua introduced a hands-free call mode, so you can put your phone on the counter and literally just talk to it while you are cooking dinner, simulating a real phone call.
Which is how a lot of us talk to real people anyway.
Right. And for people who find staring at a blank screen disconcerting, Practica utilizes visual AI avatars, giving you a face with lip syncing to focus on. But what genuinely shocked me in the research wasn't the tech itself, it was the empirical data proving its efficacy. The math behind this is staggering.
The academic data on AI efficacy is impossible to ignore. Let's look at the independent studies conducted on Gliglish's user base. Researchers rigorously tracked student progress over a set period of AI interaction. They found that objective speaking scores improved by over 75%, jumping from a baseline of 4.69 up to an 8.24.
A 75% improvement in speaking scores just from talking to a phone is a massive leap.
It is statistically massive. Furthermore, when they measured pure fluency, which linguists evaluate by tracking the pace of speech and the frequency of unnatural pauses, fluency increased by 23%.
Wow.
But the most illuminating metric goes right back to our discussion of the effective filter. The number of students in the study who self-reported feeling confident in their speaking abilities jumped from 6 to 21, and voluntary after-school speaking practice soared from 10 students to 25.
Because the fear is gone. They aren't worried about looking foolish in front of a robot. It removes the social risk entirely. But the sources don't just give us statistics. They actually provide a mathematical formula for how this fluency is achieved.
Yes, the equation.
I want to unpack this because it looks incredibly intimidating on the page. The academic paper states, fluency or f, is proportional to the sum of p sub I, divided by 1 plus e to the negative alpha times d sub I minus d bar. For anyone listening who doesn't have a PhD in mathematics, what exactly is this formula describing?
While the notation is dense, the underlying concept is beautifully elegant. It is the mathematical representation of the sigmoidal growth curve of human learning.
The sigmoidal growth curve.
Yes. Let me explain the variable simply. F is your total fluency. The formula is calculating the compounding effect of practice sessions over time.
Okay, so how does it map to how we actually learn? Let me try an analogy. Imagine your brain is a dense, snowy forest. You need to build a path through it to represent a new language chunk. If you walk through that deep snow once for 4 grueling hours on a Sunday, you leave a trail. But you don't go back. By next Sunday, the snow has fallen, the wind has blown, and the path is completely gone. You have to start over. But if you walk that exact same path for just 5 minutes every single day, you constantly pack down the snow.
You're compressing it.
Eventually, it turns into solid, frictionless ice. You can slide right across it. Is that what the math is proving?
That is a perfect visualization of the equation. The formula proves mathematically that consistent, little and often microsessions, like the 5-minute daily goal on Laura or a quick 10-minute role play on Gliglish, are vastly superior in terms of neurological retention compared to long, infrequent, grueling study sessions.
The daily repetition builds the ice path.
Exactly. It creates an S-curve or sigmoidal curve. Your fluency starts slow as you trudge through the deep snow. Then, as the path packs down, your learning speed accelerates rapidly upward. Finally, it levels off at the top of the S as the language pattern locks into your automated long-term memory.
Okay, I love the math, and I completely understand how an AI lowers the anxiety of making mistakes. But I have a major hypothesis that I need to test with you.
All right, what is it?
At the end of the day, no matter how good the large language model is, you are still talking to an algorithm. It is a machine designed to be helpful and polite. Can an AI really prepare you for the raw unpredictability, the emotional nuance, and the chaotic, messy cultural reality of an actual human interaction? Humans get impatient. Humans use sarcasm. Humans interrupt. An AI doesn't do that.
Your skepticism is entirely warranted, and it points to a crucial distinction that learners must understand. AI is not the final destination. It is the bridge.
The bridge, okay.
AI cannot perfectly replicate the true unpredictability of a human being navigating their own complex emotions, biases, and cultural quirks. However, its value lies precisely in its artificiality. Because AI lowers that effective filter to 0, it allows the learner to achieve the sheer volume of verbal repetition required to build that frictionless ice path in the brain.
Right, the volume of practice you couldn't get otherwise.
Yes. Once that cognitive muscle memory is solid, and the crippling anxiety is brought down to a manageable level, the learner is finally ready to face the ultimate test. They are ready to cross the bridge and engage with real human beings.
And taking off those AI training wheels means stepping into the vibrant, sometimes chaotic world of virtual human communities. Which brings us to the vital human element, peer-to-peer networks and social audio.
The social networks.
Yeah, there is a vast, thriving digital ecosystem of language exchange platforms out there, connecting millions of learners globally for authentic human interaction.
It is a fascinating digital landscape, and much like the AI tools, these platforms are deeply segmented based on user psychology and the specific type of social interaction they desire.
Let's look at the major players. You have Tandem, which takes a slightly more rigorous, structured approach to language exchange.
Very structured.
They utilize manual profile reviews to try and ensure they're attracting serious learners rather than casual tourists, and they feature robust inline translation and correction tools built right into the chat interface.
Then you have HelloTalk, which operates on an entirely different philosophy. HelloTalk feels much more like a traditional social media ecosystem.
It's very visually driven.
Yeah, they have a moments feed, which is essentially a timeline. You can post a picture of your breakfast with a caption in English, and native speakers from around the world will jump into the comments to offer community-wide corrections on your grammar. Plus, they host live voice rooms where multiple people can drop in and chat.
But setting up a profile, making posts, and waiting to find a compatible partner takes time. What if a learner just has 20 minutes on their lunch break and wants to speak to a human right now?
That is where the quick connector platforms dominate. Apps like Speaky offer very streamlined, low-friction online text and audio connections without a lengthy onboarding or matching process. You simply log on, see who is currently active globally, and initiate a conversation.
Boom, instant connection.
But perhaps the most innovative in this category is Lingby. Lingby is designed for entirely on-demand, spontaneous voice calls. What makes it brilliant is that it operates on a gamified behavioral economics model powered by a virtual currency called Lingos.
I found the Lingos concept fascinating. It's a closed-loop economy. You earn the currency by donating your time to help someone practice your native language. Once you have banked enough Lingos, you spend them to instantly connect with a native speaker of your target language.
It forces equal participation.
Exactly. It solves the classic freeloader problem in language exchanges, where everyone wants to learn but nobody wants to teach. Now, for learners who still harbor a significant amount of social anxiety, perhaps they are off the AI, but not quite ready for a one-on-one video call, there is the world of social audio and drop-ins.
Which is brilliant for introverts.
HiLocal is a masterclass in this format. It hosts live audio tables similar to Clubhouse. Crucially, users can join a table and simply sit in the audience and listen for as long as they want before ever requesting the microphone to speak.
It allows anxious learners to slowly acclimate to the temperature of the water before swimming.
Alternatively, you have Episode, which attacks anxiety through strict time constraints. They offer highly structured one-on-one video sessions that automatically terminate after exactly 7 minutes.
That is such a smart feature.
It removes the dread of being trapped in an awkward conversation. If you connect with someone and the chemistry is terrible, you know with absolute certainty that it will be over in 7 minutes.
And if you don't want a conversation at all, but just have a hyper-specific question, there are targeted Q&A platforms like HiNative.
Right.
You can literally record a 5-second audio clip of yourself trying to pronounce a difficult word, upload it, and ask a global community of native speakers, hey, does this sound natural?
And while these digital tools are powerful, the sources also remind us not to neglect the traditional in-person methods that have worked for decades. Platforms like My Language Exchange focus heavily on structured lesson plans and long-term asynchronous pen-pal relationships.
The slow burn approach.
Yeah. Conversation Exchange and the ubiquitous Meetup app are incredibly effective for organizing real-world, face-to-face practice groups in your local city. And of course, Reddit maintains a massive, highly active community on the Language Exchange subreddit for self-directed learners looking to arrange their own Zoom calls.
The Reddit community is incredibly dedicated.
I love looking at this entire ecosystem through the lens of sports. Practicing with an AI tutor is like standing alone on a tennis court, hitting a ball against a brick wall. It is fantastic for perfecting your swing mechanics, it builds deep muscle memory, and the wall will never judge you if you miss.
But these human exchange apps...
This is like finally stepping onto the court to play a real match against a living opponent. The ball comes back at you with a different spin every single time. The wind is blowing, the sun is in your eyes.
Sure.
But with so many different types of courts available, how does a learner know which app is the right environment for them?
Choosing the right platform ultimately comes down to an honest assessment of the learner's own personality type and immediate goals. Highly social, extroverted learners who are motivated by making global friends will thrive in the feed-based, community-driven environment of HelloTalk.
Makes sense.
Anxious introverts who need to wade into the pool very slowly benefit immensely from the pressure-free listening environment of HelloCal. Self-starters who like to rigorously manage their own schedules and curriculum might prefer the freedom of finding a dedicated partner on Reddit. And professionals hyper-focused on fixing a specific phonetic issue should definitely utilize HelloCal.
So there's a tool for every personality.
But regardless of which platform you choose, the absolute non-negotiable key to successful human exchange is the principle of reciprocity.
Reciprocity, meaning you have to give back exactly as much value as you extract from the other person.
Yes. A language exchange is not free tutoring. It is a mutual barter of cultural capital. If you are a Spanish speaker practicing English with an American, you must strictly dedicate half of your scheduled time to patiently helping them stumble through their Spanish.
Fair is fair.
If you treat them merely as a free resource for your own English acquisition, the relationship will inevitably collapse.
That makes perfect sense. It has to be a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
But here is a dilemma that we haven't addressed yet. Let's say you find a great partner on Tandem. How do you know what real native human conversation is actually supposed to sound like before you engage with them?
What do you mean?
If you have spent your entire life reading silent textbooks and talking to an AI voice that speaks with perfect measured clarity, how do you know the natural rhythm, the subtle changes in tone, or the cultural body language? You can't just guess. You need models. You need to observe the language operating in the wild.
Which brings us to the critical, indispensable role of audiovisual modeling. Consuming digital input, specifically through YouTube and podcasts, provides learners with authentic, unscripted models for natural speech. More importantly, video provides the vital cultural context that completely surrounds and colors the words being spoken.
The YouTube creator landscape dedicated to English learning is absolutely massive, and it is surprisingly diverse in its pedagogical approaches.
It really is.
Let's look at some of the key figures highlighted in the sources. You have creators like Bob the Canadian. His approach is brilliant in its simplicity. He literally takes a camera out into his daily life and films mundane scenes while speaking in simple, clear English.
Just everyday life.
Yeah, he will walk into a hardware store, pick up tools, and just talk about hammers, nails, and drywall.
The pedagogical value of Bob the Canadian is that he firmly grounds abstract vocabulary in physical reality. You aren't just memorizing the word hammer from a vocabulary list. You're watching a human hold one and describe its function in context.
It's so much stickier for the brain.
Exactly. Then, on the other end of the spectrum, you have Rachel's English, which is a masterclass in phonetic instruction. Her background is fascinating. She is a classically trained opera singer.
Which seems completely unrelated at first.
Right, but she utilizes her deep mechanical understanding of the human vocal tract to break down American phonetics for intermediate and advanced learners.
Using classical opera training to teach ESL is such an incredible pivot. But it makes perfect sense when you realize that speaking a language is not just a mental exercise, it is a highly coordinated physical muscular act.
It's physical training.
Rachel teaches learners exactly where to anchor their tongue behind their teeth, how much tension to hold in their jaw, and how to physically shape their lips to produce native-sounding vowels. It's acoustic engineering.
It really is. You also have creators like Speak English with Vanessa, who focuses heavily on practical, everyday fluency and confidence building for beginners. And on the more formal, institutional side, BBC Learning English offers incredibly high production value, a focus on professional communication, and crucial exposure to the nuances of the British dialect.
And operating alongside this rich video landscape, we have the immense immersive value of audio podcasts. Shows like Luke's English Podcast, which has produced over 900 episodes seamlessly blending dry humor with deep language analysis.
Or Real English Conversations.
Right, which provides exactly what the title promises, unscripted dialogues between native speakers. However, simply putting on a podcast while you wash the dishes and letting the audio play in the background is not enough to drive true acquisition.
Not at all.
The pedagogical magic only happens through an active cognitive process called noticing.
Wait, I want to challenge this concept first.
Okay, challenge away.
Let's say a learner sits down for an hour to watch YouTube tours of a Canadian hardware store and then listens to a British comedian's podcast. Does that actually count as rigorous studying? Isn't that just passive entertainment masquerading as education? How does watching a vlog move the needle on actual functional fluency?
It is a very fair challenge. The reality is it certainly can be purely passive entertainment if the learner just sits back and lets the stream of noise wash over them.
Right, like watching Netflix.
Passive listening does very little to rewire the brain. But when this media is consumed in tandem with the active process of noticing, it transforms into a profoundly powerful pedagogical tool. The noticing hypothesis in linguistics dictates that learners cannot acquire a specific language feature until they consciously register its presence in the input.
Consciously register it. Okay.
Noticing is the act of actively identifying, extracting, and mentally tagging linguistic features used by native speakers in their natural context. You hear a comedian tell a story, you notice the specific grammar structure they use to set up the punchline, and your brain clicks. Ah, so that is how they deploy the past continuous tense in real life.
I see. You are actively hunting for the architecture within the noise.
Precisely. And the absolute most valuable tool to facilitate this hunting process is the transcript. Following a written transcript while listening to complex, fast-paced, unscripted dialogue allows the learner's brain to map the chaotic, blended auditory sounds directly to the cleanly separated written words.
It decodes the phonological reduction we discussed earlier, like house it.
Exactly. Furthermore, video content provides the visual and cultural context. The slight roll of the eyes, the dismissive hand gestures, the physical proximity between the speakers that textbooks ruthlessly strip away.
Okay, so through this act of noticing, you are essentially building a massive, detailed mental library of how native speakers actually talk, move, form their mouths, and react to stimuli.
And what happens when you combine that deep visual cultural context with all the structural vocabulary and AI practice you've accumulated? You unlock what feels like the final boss of language learning, advanced fluency. Specifically, the mastery of idioms, social nuance, and complex conflict navigation.
Yes. Reaching advanced fluency is the process of moving from a basic literal understanding of words to native-sounding, culturally embedded expression. But it is vital to remember that all of this beautiful, nuanced expression is still built upon the rigid, structural architecture of a language.
We take the basic SVO architecture, subject, verb, object, as a given for anyone operating at this advanced stage.
Correct. A learner must have already transitioned from relying on simple declarative sentences like she watered the plants to effortlessly chaining together compound and complex ideas that flow naturally.
But once that structural foundation is fully automated in the brain, the learner can begin decorating that architecture with idioms.
And English is absolutely loaded with them. It is a highly metaphorical language. The conversational phrase books we reviewed are bursting with these. They dictate that to initiate a difficult conversation, you break the ice.
Or when it is time to study, you don't just read, you hit the books.
If a task is remarkably easy, it is a piece of cake.
And if a new car is overly expensive, it costs an arm and a leg.
We also see idioms heavily deployed when navigating sensitive societal topics, particularly how we describe wealth and age. In English culture, directly stating someone is poor can feel abrasive. Instead, we use idioms to soften the reality. We say they are scraping by or pinching pennies.
Conversely, if someone is ostentatiously wealthy, we might refer to them as filthy rich.
I love the phrase filthy rich. It adds so much narrative flavor. It implies a level of wealth that is almost indecent.
Similarly, when discussing age, directly calling someone old is often a faux pas. So we use colorful metaphors saying someone is over the hill, or to describe an older person trying to act young, noting that they are no spring chicken.
We also see this advanced fluency heavily embedded in how people navigate daily entertainment, using culturally specific terms like channel surfing, catching a rerun, or eagerly anticipating the season finale.
Because these aren't just dictionary vocabulary words, they are shared cultural touchstones.
And mastering nuance becomes incredibly critical when navigating interpersonal conflict and differing opinions. Advanced fluency means possessing the vocabulary to know the exact difference between polite, professional disagreement, deploying phrases like, I beg to differ, or that's not exactly how I see it, versus completely and aggressively shutting a conversation down with, I'm not at liberty to say, or the highly confrontational, mind your own business.
But I want to explore the vivid imagery of idioms a bit deeper. My question is, why do we use them at all? Why do we say someone is a few cards short of a deck or not the sharpest tool in the shed, instead of just directly stating that we think they are unintelligent? What do these colorful, highly illogical phrases actually do for the mechanics of a conversation?
That is a highly perceptive question, and it cuts to the core of sociolinguistics. Idioms are not just decorative flair. They are the ultimate proof of cultural competence.
They prove you belong.
They perform a vital social function known as mitigation. By utilizing an elaborate metaphor like, not the sharpest tool in the shed, you are intentionally softening the delivery of a harsh or critical concept. It wraps the insult in a layer of humor, making it less directly confrontational than a blunt assessment of their intelligence.
It's a social cushion.
But more importantly, from a language acquisition standpoint, successfully deploying an idiom signals to the native speaker that the learner has fully integrated into the culture. It is proof that they have moved far beyond literal, robotic, word-for-word translation in their head and have truly grasped the shared cultural shorthand of the tribe.
It functions as the ultimate linguistic secret handshake. It proves you are on the inside. Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a moment to wrap this up. We've talked about the long, beautiful, grueling journey of building fluency. But what if you are a listener who is in a foreign country right now?
Right this second.
You haven't mastered the complex idioms. You haven't spent hours actively noticing SVO structures on YouTube. You haven't spent the last 6 months packing down the snowy path in your brain with AI apps. You are standing in a chaotic train station in Tokyo or trying to explain a medical allergy to a pharmacist in Berlin, and you need to communicate immediately, accurately, and without failure. What is the right now solution?
The right now solution requires abandoning the goal of acquisition entirely and relying solely on real-time translation tools. This addresses the absolute necessity of instant communication when your long-term educational journey hasn't yet bridged the practical, immediate gap in front of you.
We're talking about tools like Translate AI. These platforms can execute live voice translation, where you speak into the phone and it speaks the translation aloud. They handle text translation and, incredibly, camera translation, where you simply point your phone's lens at a complex train schedule or a menu, and it visually overlays the translated text right onto the image on your screen.
It's basically science fiction.
It really is. It is the perfect tool for travelers who are hopelessly lost and need directions, expats standing utterly confused in a foreign grocery store, or even professionals in immediate high-stakes medical or legal meetings where exact, flawless comprehension is critical, and you absolutely cannot afford a misunderstanding.
It serves as the ultimate safety net.
If you go back to our earlier analogy, if daily language learning is the slow, painstaking process of building a sturdy bridge over a rushing river, sometimes you just need to charter a fast boat and cross the river right now. That is what these translation apps are.
The boat analogy is a perfect summation. We must clearly and honestly differentiate between apps for learning and apps for living.
I love that distinction. Apps for learning versus apps for living.
Apps for learning, like your AI tutors on Gliglish or your social exchanges on Tandem, are pedagogically designed to build cognitive muscle memory, systematically lower your affective filter, and slowly forge you into a fluent, independent speaker over months and years.
While apps for living,
Like Translate AI, are designed to solve immediate, urgent communication barriers in the present moment, requiring zero cognitive effort from the user. Both categories are absolutely essential tools in the modern global citizens toolkit, but they serve entirely different, albeit complementary, purposes.
so what does this massive sociolinguistic journey mean for you, the listener, right now? Let's do a rapid recap of the ground we've covered today.
Sounds good.
We started by ditching those stiff, tuxedo-like textbook readings and explored the hidden mechanics of phonological reduction, like how's it and social entry. We dissected how utilizing formulaic chunks, those prefabricated scripts for navigating the coffee shop and the train station, actually lower your neurological cognitive load and free up your brain's RAM to handle conversational surprises.
We then dove deep into the psycholinguistics of the affective filter, that paralyzing stage fright that traps our vocabulary in our heads. We saw exactly how the latest AI apps provide safe, mathematically optimized, judgment-free zones to build that crucial muscle memory, ultimately preparing us for the vibrant, chaotic reality of human exchanges on platforms like HelloTalk or HiLocal.
And finally, we explored how active noticing through YouTubers and podcasters gives us the vital audio-visual motors we need to master the rich, metaphorical idioms that act as our cultural secret handshake.
The whole journey.
The whole journey. Now, before we sign off, here's something I want you to try today. I want you to step back and reflect on your own native language. Pay close attention to the formulaic chunks, the predictable transactional scripts, and the weird, illogical idioms you use every single day on complete autopilot, without ever stopping to conjugate a verb or analyze the grammar.
Like piece of cake.
Exactly. Notice exactly how you order your lunch, or the specific register you use to greet your coworker versus your best friend. That effortless, unthinking automaticity. That is the true, functional definition of fluency.
It is a profound, almost jarring realization when you finally notice the complex linguistic programming running quietly in the background of your own mind.
It truly is. Now, to wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a fascinating, perhaps slightly provocative question to ponder on your own.
Oh, I'm ready.
We just talked about those apps for living, like Translate AI. If these technological tools continue to advance at their current breakneck speed until real time, in-ear translation is perfectly flawless, completely instantaneous, and captures every subtle idiom and emotional nuance perfectly without you ever having to study a flashcard. Will the psycholinguistic drive to learn a language just for transactional daily survival disappear entirely?
That's a deep question.
Will the grueling, frustrating, yet profoundly beautiful process of truly learning a language from scratch eventually be reserved strictly for those seeking deep, unfiltered cultural and emotional connection?
If the transactional need to order coffee or buy a train ticket vanishes through perfect technology, the only compelling reason left to endure the muddy, difficult waters of language learning will be the pure desire for true, unmediated human empathy.
And maybe that raw, unmediated empathy is exactly the one thing that a perfect algorithm can never truly capture for us. The messy, beautiful reality of human connection. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today. Keep learning, keep noticing, and we'll catch you next time.